Hey everyone, just a quick video today. I finally got my prototype sorted out for the novels. There's still a bit of a mistake which I'll talk about, but these are the three novels of Amethyst that are part of the Kickstarter. These are the three novels that I have made so far. There's only one other novel that I have written that's not here, and that's House of Sky, which is not part of Amethyst. So these are the new prints. These are significantly larger than my usual prints. This is my format going forward. I think I'm going to sell these in this size. The matte cover, I have to admit, I'm becoming kind of a lover of. So Controlling Chaos having the glossy cover, I think I'm going to stop doing. I think I'm going to switch this to matte rather than switch these two to color. These are, of course, are not in the right order. Of course, it is that order. That's the order in which they fall. Book 1, Book 2, Book 3. Book 1, I think, was published in 2010. This was soon after in 2014, and this was this year. It took a while because I wrote Affinity in between and got into game publishing. The other thing I also want to make a note is that these are slightly updated. Because basically I had to reread in order to make sure this was up to date. And so I made a point of adjusting a few things. Not much, just grammar, some spelling, a few plot, small little points were just adjusted. So if you haven't read them, definitely not a bad idea to re-educate yourself with the series. Just for your information, like that's the size of a book 1, and that's the size of a book 2, and that's the size of a book 3. So you can see here that yes, Hallowed Kingdoms is considerably larger than the other two, and they all have the same format. Thankfully, I've also fixed the layout. We were having issues before, especially when I was printing these books with blurb. So that one is at 340 pages. Controlling Chaos should be slightly smaller at 308, and of course Hallowed Kingdoms is at 500. For those people who don't know, these two books were supposed to be one. Technically, this is supposed to be book 2 and this is book 1. When I originally was trying to get an agent, one person that was interested in representing me, which ended up not, told me that this book was too big, and if I wanted to be attractive to a young adult audience, which I ended up not doing anyway, that I should cut it down. And so I did, and then they came back and said, "There's no way you could have cut that book down to size in the time he gave me." So he decided to not represent me, not realizing that there was actually a point where you could very easily and conveniently go and cut it down. Now, the irony about that is that I went back in and ended up adding in so much additional content, it got to almost the size of both these two together. When I got to Controlling Chaos, I also added a bit more, but not as much more, which is the reason why it's shorter. Controlling Chaos, in some ways, feels like a small entry in a smaller travelogue. It doesn't have as big an arc as this book or this book. That's because this one is supposed to be part of this. And some people may say, well, that makes sense, but it also means the original first book would have had a very large epilogue per se, because there's a big climax that at this point would have been in the middle of the book, and then the story would have kept going. That is true, but I also wasn't necessarily beholden to creating a more traditional story where the biggest action set piece occurred at the end of the story, and here it occurred about 60-70% into the story. The real climax was the emotional climax that happened later on at the end of book 2. Now, that also being said, there's a critical thing that happens at the end of this book, which actually happens at the end of this book. I actually put that plot point in this one, and so the second one is more of a reaffirming climax rather than a big revelation. For those people who read the book, you might know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to spoil it too much. Hallowed Kingdoms, of course, is much, much larger, and the most important thing about this one is that where Aiden's Way focuses on one person's story arc and rarely deviates, Controlling Chaos focuses on two groups of people. Hallowed Kingdom follows, at one point, it follows 4. And then it whittles it down to 2 by the end. That's not really a big spoiler. It's not really much of a plot point there. But that does explain why this book is so much larger. And there's also a lot. I always feel like these two have a little bit of padding even. And this one is not. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that one. But backers are going to receive... people who get the physical novels will be receiving these. This is going to be in matte. It's not going to be glossy like it is now. That's a pretty easy fix. And that's the reason why, is because these are not being printed in China. If you order a small batch of novels, it actually costs way more than to do it from the United States. So unlike the RPGs, which are being printed in China, these are being printed in the US and then getting shipped from separately, because it's way easier to do small batch print on demand orders for these. Because I'm only doing maybe about 100 books of each, because that's the number of people who back the physical copy, and I don't want to overprint and have hundreds of stuff. Also, the distributor that's handling Amethyst doesn't generally deal with novels, and so any excess novels I think would be sitting there unsold. So I want to keep the number of actual novels being printed to a minimum. So this is how it's going to look. I think these look pretty good. I definitely like the size. The layout looks really well. I think these are the best looking versions of these novels that I have seen to date. Anyway, guys, that was basically it.